convictions, and fight for real justice reform. I'm Rebecca, your host, and today's episode is one that every listener needs to hear because it's a case where the system failed at every level. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the conviction of Joshua Brazzel. I recently sat with Joshua for a phone interview about his experience. And before we roll that conversation, I want to lay out the facts that you won't hear in any headlines. So let's start at the beginning. Joshua was convicted of dealing drugs. But here's the thing. There were no controlled buys, no witnesses, and no direct evidence. The police obtained a search warrant for Joshua's home and storage unit without ever conducting a single controlled buy. There were no eyewitnesses to any alleged drug activity, and no physical evidence tying Joshua to any criminal behavior. So how did they justify this warrant? Well, there was a confidential informant. That's right. The key informant in this case was a child, just 8 years old, who couldn't even accurately describe anything that he supposedly saw in the house. When the search warrant was executed, there were no drugs found in Joshua's home at all. But the police didn't stop there. They changed their story, claiming there were not just one, but 3 confidential informants, and relied on statements from the child's parents as well. Which, as everybody knows, that's considered hearsay. But what was never disclosed was the hidden motives behind this supposed confession from this 8-year-old child. Here's what the jury and the judge never heard. The biological father of the 8-year-old was the ex-partner of Joshua's significant other. He had filed for emergency custody of his son, and the only way to get it was to get Joshua out of the picture. This critical information was never disclosed to the judge. Information that could have revealed a motive of revenge, not justice. And here's another point in the case. This was a dangerous and unnecessary raid. At 2:47 a.m., police stormed Joshua's home using flashbang grenades. 5 children were inside this home, the youngest just 5 weeks old. There was no clear threat or justification for such extreme tactics. When police don't follow the law, it's innocent families who pay the price. And instead of admitting their errors or investigating further, the police and prosecutor doubled down. Joshua was sentenced to 50 years in prison, with the possibility of serving at least 24 years, all while the real story remained hidden. This is why Wickedly Judge exists. Because when those in power break the rules, justice gets twisted and lives are destroyed. Joshua's case is a textbook example of how personal vendettas, shoddy police work, and a lack of transparency can lead to devastating consequences. Now, let's hear from Joshua himself. In this pre-recorded interview, he shares his side of the story, what really happened, how the investigation unfolded, and what it feels like to face decades behind bars for a crime that remains unproven. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Wickedly Judge. I have Joshua Brazzel on the phone with me, and he is going to tell us all about his case and what has happened to him. Hey Josh, how you doing today? Yeah, given the circumstances, I can understand that. So let's go ahead and jump into this. Give us a little bit of background about your circumstances that led up to your arrest in 2008.
Okay, so in 2008, I was young father at that time. I was, still trying to figure things out and best that I could. And, I had a completely mixed family. Doing the best. I had 5 kids in my house under the age of 8. And, I was asking for help when I was, and, it wasn't easy. At the time, I turned 20 in January of way. So, I had quite a bit on my plate time.
And what do you recall about the events of the SWAT style raid that led to your arrest?
So, to start with, they had just a search warrant, not an arrest search warrant, to come search my home. Look for evident crime. And they had admitted that I had been under investigation by multiple officers or multiple agencies. And rather than trying, maybe go within my normal routine, wait for me to drop my kids off at school, and then pull me over, detain me, and execute a warrant at my home. They used something like 40 off, so I've never worked together before their first time, and they used explosives to enter the home, the flashbangs. And, they used flashbangs to enter the home at 2:41 a.m., throwing them into the house. They had video recorders as they came through, and, sure that they burned for, the shattered glass, sliding doors that were knocked off hinge, battering rams. They entered the home, black ski mask, assault rifle, hard telling what type of trauma that the kids forced to deal with from that point forward because they were terrified. Mad men dressed all black, all right, bombs enter our home for a search warrant, not an arrest. Insane. Especially my youngest child, I'm 5 old. What if one of these flashbangs would have landed in his career? Christ's sake.
Oh my goodness. Now, at that point, did they arrest you, or did?
Yes, they went ahead. They had detained me at that moment, placing me in handcuffs as they had brought in an entire paddy wagon full of detectives to begin searching. They had at least 2 to search each room of the home, and then to tell that they were simultaneously orchestrating as well search warrants with off-site storage facilities as well.
And what exactly were they looking for?
On their warrants, what they were looking for was, they said methamphetamine, marijuana, cocaine, heroin. They were basically using a general vague warrant because what were they not looking for? Because they took just about everything you'd imagine, whether it was covered within the warrant or not. They took so many things, and I'm not exactly sure why they was able to take some of the things that they did. Instance, I had a bunch of brand new electronic equipment, and they had taken it, alleging that it had been stolen, but Walmart had turned around because they had tried to return it to Walmart. Walmart said that yes, at one point the items were there. They had no idea whether they were sold, they were stolen, whether they were still in stock or not. So they turned around and donated them back to the sheriff department. If something's stolen, then how come the person that it's allegedly stolen from doesn't even know it's stolen, and how can they donate my property when they don't know if it was stolen or not? But yeah, they kind of came in just searching for whatever it is that they could all fit in their pockets.
And what did they end up charging you with?
So at first they charged me with dealing methamphetamine. They charged trafficking in marijuana over 10 pounds. They charged me as a domestic batterer in possession of firearm, and they charged receiving stolen property, and also as an habitual offender.
Now, what did they end up convicting you of?
So at conviction at trial, they convicted me of dealing methamphetamine over 3 grams. That convicted me of trafficking marijuana over 10 pounds, and convicted me of receiving stolen property.
And how much time did you end up with?
They sentenced me to 50 to 25 years. So they sentenced me to a maximum sentence on the 50 for dealing methamphetamine to run concurrently with the 8 years for trafficking marijuana over 10 pounds, run concurrently with 3 years for receiving stolen property.
And how did your defense team approach the charges at trial? Do you feel that you actually had adequate representation?
Well, they did a pretty good job of allowing me to believe that they were looking out for my best interest. But as I later learned when I was forced to represent myself, the things that they were doing were not the things that they should have. And, there was a lot going on there as well. Like, my attorney in the middle of my trial, seeing with my significant other in a bar setting, when she went to testify about these things in a post-conviction, judge immediately intervened, began his own line of questioning and shut that questioning down. Good old boy system of just covering each other's backs, I thought.
Now, did you have any concerns about your representation during your trial that you actually brought up while it was happening? Or was this all stuff that you kind of learned later on?
Some of it I learned later on, only when I was given the record for myself, when I was forced to represent myself. But there were some things that I was questioning at trial to my attorney right then, like the fact that my significant other, she'd had a communication with one of the jurors that was impaneled on my trial, and she was expressing a negative view of me prior to any conviction. So I would let the attorney know about this, hey, check this out. She's saying that no matter what happens, she feels like the kids are better off, this new guy that she's with anyway, because the juror and new guy both worked at the same place as diesel mechanics together, and, this negative opinion, I'm like, hey, whoa, hold on, this is an issue, you know what I mean? And he never bothered with that, or the fact that, guns that I was not charged with was being presented at my trial, so-called tools of the trade, and they were showing the jury how to use zip strips to, more quickly load SKS assault rifle. When these guns I was not charged with first place, how are they being presented as evidence in my trial? Good questions, I felt at the time, but not as good as some of the things that I later learned.
Now, were there any specific pieces of evidence or any witnesses that you believe should have been presented but were not?
Absolutely no. First, I've come to learn as I filed my post-conviction relief, that there's a process they do here in Indiana, and, it's one thing that if given an opportunity, I want to see change because I so disagree with it, but they have what they call merit review board. So whenever you're indigent and you request represented by the state public defender's office, they tell you it's a first come, first served basis, and I understand that, but you wait about 2 years, and then they come, they see you, they smile in your face, and they tell you that opening your file was like opening a present on Christmas morning. And what they do next is merit review. And there's no legal backing, no legal standard. There's no oversight to it. But this merit review board is essentially a kangaroo court that they set up in and amongst their office, their colleagues, and they all get to play someday. So one of them gets to pretend to be a judge, while one of them gets to pretend to be an attorney general. And the most hilarious part, one of them pretends to be your state public defender. And one person they forget to add to this kangaroo court is you, so that you may be able to assist in your own defense in any manner or help clarify any question they arise. But no, they do this without you, and they determine whether your case has enough merit to be represented by their office. And what they say is you have no merit, and they withdraw from your case. And at that point, you're forced to represent yourself, which forces you to play the game because then you have to pretend to be an attorney, and you have to pretend to go to law school, which you didn't do. So deck stacked against you. You have to jump through all these hoops, all these trials, and all these tribulations to hopefully get far. And as lucky as I've gotten to get to where I'm at now. And the one thing that I want to say is, if in fact it does show that I did in the end have merit, then it shows that I slipped cracks. And if I slipped the crack, how many other people are sitting in prison right now who wasn't able to play attorney well enough or to have got to jump through each one of these timelines, deadlines, reaching all these courts, filing each motion brief? How many other people are sitting in prison right now who slipped through the cracks, didn't get as lucky? You know what I mean? When we ask for this, when we ask to be represented by the state public defender, I feel like everyone's entitled to it, whether you're poor or not. And for them to sit here, pretend to be a judge for the day, and determine whether or not you have merit without any of your assistant credit, that's something that shouldn't exist. That's why it has no legal backing. That's why it should cease to exist.
I agree. I 100% agree. My whole thing is you go to law school to become a lawyer. So your prosecutor had to go to law school and pass the board. Your defense attorney had to go to law school and pass the board. The judge had to go to law school and pass the board. Them 12 people sitting in that box, they ain't spent a day in law school, but yet they can determine your fate. Or you have to represent yourself and you're supposed to play like you know what you're doing. It's ridiculous. The whole system needs to be overhauled.
And it does. And that's one thing that we might be able to get a merit review board, because when you have to be represented, you should be represented. You should have an ad. That should take it from us.
Well, it's part of the Constitution. Everybody is entitled to it. It's your God-given right to have an attorney represent you and to actually represent you to the best of their ability. But instead, what happens is these public pretenders get in there and they're in the pocket of the prosecutor because they're all they're all friends, and they discuss the case like it's nothing.
Oh, I know. And here's the one thing I can't take from it, though, is, when it forced me to represent myself, it gave me access to case files that I didn't have access for. And what it did is it opened my eyes to things that I didn't know at times. Like, as an instance, something my attorney, the biggest mistake that I see that he made more than anything else is in the application search warrant itself. I have a lead narcotics investigator. So the way that this case came about is, we'll call this a misrepresentation at best, but the way this case came about is my 8-year-old stepson, his father and stepmother walk into a 21st century police department. And when they walk in, the father and stepmother says, this is what the child told us. Well, without offering any independent information of their own to say that this is what the kid told us, that's called what you call hearsay information.
Yep.
And it's crazy because walking into a 21st century police department, they didn't take a video recording of any of these statements. They didn't take an audio recording of any of these statements. They didn't even take a written of any of these individuals. And amazingly enough, even after the fact, my attorney never even took a deposition of these individuals from which the entire case started. So what happens is, the narcotics investigator, he goes in, he applies a search warrant from the judge, and he goes and tells, Your Honor, I've received reliable information from 3 separate confidential informants. Now hold on, 3 separate confidential informants? You have an 8-year-old boy, which you suspiciously, withheld the age of to that judge. Then the father, stepmother, who only offered hearsay information, so, that shouldn't account for anything. And the fact that you decided to leave out the potential for bias, considering the father had filed for an emergency, he filed an emergency custody petition, alleging that drugs would be found in the home before drugs were ever found. So
Almost sounds like retaliation.
But hold on, it gets better still though. So he files an emergency custody alleging drugs would be found in the home, requesting custody of the child because just the custodial mother, my significant other. So he's going in, and no one informed this judge, this father is in the middle of a custody dispute by significant other, which is potential to lie, the potential bias. Or later, even the lead narcotics investigator admitted that the child had been coached to say some of the things that he said because he couldn't describe the things in which he told him. Like when asked what an 8-ball was, he couldn't describe what that was. So if you're saying that you've seen something like this, well, can you at least describe what's like? And no, he couldn't. You know what I mean?
Right.
So he felt as if the child had been coached, there was potential bias, and he failed to even inform them, the hearsay information, father and from the mother or stepmother. But we'll call that a mischaracterization at best. Because the judge stops him at that point and he says, well, how can you verify this information? And he says, well, Your Honor, I have other officers' confidential similar information establishing probable cause, and he signs that warrant. Now, as I get into deposition with him, I ask who are these other officers. He tells me Flynn and Branham. I get their depositions, their sworn testimony, under oath. Who are your confidential informants? What information did they relay to you? What did you relay to him? They looked me dead in the eyes and they said, we didn't have any confidential informants pertaining to you. We didn't give him any information. Now, that's not a mischaracterization. That is an outright lie in the application search warrant itself. And I wouldn't have known any of this had I not been forced to play attorney for myself. And then I get to studying it a little bit further because I'm like, well, what loophole they be looking? They would say, well, there's this good faith exception where if the officers execute warrant would rely on good faith, then, then we can have our buddy go in there and lie and obtain this warrant. But you know what? It doesn't apply because good faith exception does not apply when they're instrumental in the execution of the warrant itself. And he couldn't let it go because he had to be instrumental in the execution warrant. He was there to pressure everyone on what to do and how to do it. So that doesn't apply in case. So when I attempt to present this to the post-conviction court, when I was forced to represent myself, the judge, he immediately tries to say, well, res judicata, meaning I'm bringing forth an issue brought forth before. And I said, Your Honor, I'd like to clarify, court, I'm not bringing forth saying Fourth Amendment violation that has already been presented to this court. As a matter of fact, I'm bringing forth Fifth Amendment violation. In effect, counsel, for failing to properly litigate a motion to correct because my counsel was aware of this information. And this information was not a strategic decision. It was rather a miscarriage of justice because an officer of the court, such as an attorney, when aware of this, has an ethical obligation or magistrate judge when another officer has committed perjury, especially in the application for a search warrant. The entire nexus of their case, remember, this was a search warrant, not an arrest warrant. So he lied to obtain the search warrant. That's all through poisonous tree. Everything they found at that warrant is now null and void. They arrested me on a case they never had enough probable cause to arrest me for in the first place.
Fruits of the poisonous tree. If you don't know what that is, you need to go check it out, everybody. It will definitely open your eyes.
Absolutely. And what gets better as I try to bend it forward in this post-conviction hearing, you know what I mean? And I tried to explain to him Sixth Amendment violation, not the same fourth, as I tried to clarify. The judge shuts him down, and he refuses to allow me an argument, you know what I mean? Which is in direct violation of Strickland versus Washington, because under Strickland versus Washington, in order to prove the Sixth Amendment violation, Fourth Amendment now becomes a sub-issue of the Sixth, and I must present it, and you must hear it in order for me to show that a reasonable jurist would have a decision to make. So I was well within my right to attempt to present, but he refused to even allow me to make an offer of proof. Nothing to the record. And the appeals court agreed with me on that under no circumstance should a judge ever completely deny, especially a pro se defendant, the opportunity to present an offer of proof for the record. But he did. And then they said, but you could have filed a motion to reconsider. And I'm glad that they said that. As a matter of fact, I did. And they go back, check the docket. I did file the motion to reconsider. And he denied it, you know what I mean? And that's what opens the door for us to go into the United States District Court. Yep. Because what the United States District Court has done in 2001, they created the Anti-Death Penalty Act. And they say in order to present a federal habeas corpus, you must present a constitutional violation. Yep. And you are able to present any constitutional violation other than what they call a freestanding Fourth Amendment claim. Because they say if you've had a full and fair opportunity to present a Fourth Amendment claim in a state court, you can no longer present that to the district court. Well, in this case, I was denied a full and fair opportunity to present state court. Therefore, it opens the door for me to present it in the U.S. District Court. And I've rightfully done so. And I followed and I checked off every base along the way. You know what I mean? And they still denied me that opportunity to heard. And that's where I'm at right now, is I'm in appeal of the federal habeas court. I filed a certificate of appealability. They've accepted it in the Seventh Circuit, United States Federal Court of Appeals, out of the Seventh Circuit, Chicago, Illinois. They accepted under advisement for 8 years, 1 month, and so many days. I mean, we're talking about a complete due process violation. Completely unconstitutional to be forced to wait this long, because I've tried to push the case forward. I've done everything in my power to push this case, and they denied me the opportunity heard. Keep it under advice. Keep telling me I'm under no timeline. I'm under no deadline. Decision is made. I will be notified. Well, at this point, gone on for so long that getting ready to file a writ of mandamus, a motion to compel release of body. Yep. And there's no reason that I should not prevail on. But at the same time, I need the attention of the public so that the court does make it right, so that I'm not just one person in a fair sleep under a rug, as I've done to so many before. Because it's bringing light to a lot of people, to a lot of people's situations, and they're in the same situation that I am.
Absolutely. And then once your case is overturned, then you become case law.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of people that are opportunities that maybe they weren't able to play attorney as well as I have, or maybe they didn't get as lucky as I've got, because it takes an awful lot of luck and an awful lot of sacrifice, a lot of dedication to get where I've got. But you know what? I've uncovered a lot, and I've learned a lot being forced along the law. That is one thing I can walk away with, is being grateful for that.
So what would justice look like for you at this stage? What would you consider justice for you?
I mean, how do you even begin to consider just taking the life of someone for 18 years? I've been sitting maximum security with no hope of rehabilitation, no hope now, doing worst thing you can imagine for 8 years, you know, for a case that I should have never wrestled in with, and they've known it the entire time, and I've argued it the whole time, and they've tried to silence, tried to hush me, and they've tried to sweep me under rugs, they've tried to twist the facts of the case up like Rubik's Cube, and I've slowly untwisted them one piece at a time, trying to send them one step at a time. Justice at this point, I feel like justice at this point, for one, it's already in the law. Justice point should be my freedom. That's one aspect of this. So justice for me at this stage, no, the law already said that justice is my freedom. But then how do you compensate for 8 years? In 18 years, placed in maximum security prison, no hope, with the worst of the worst for as long as I have? That's hard for me to say what justice would look like. But, you know, I feel like I wouldn't even be worthy of justice unless way to give back to everyone as a whole, because I feel like, you know, it's my obligation to be able to give back in some form, some manner, some way. If I succeed, if I can help others not have to go through what I've gone through, you know what I mean? If I could eliminate this merit review board where people would actually have an adequate representation as we're supposed to be afforded by our Constitution, that would look like justice. But it's hard to put a value on missing out 18 years of my children's lives. My youngest son was 5 weeks old when I came to prison, 5 weeks old. And I'm just grateful that I've been able to maintain a relationship with my children as strongly as I have, and that I've been with my children, you know, I mean, at least once a week, the whole of their lives, and that my boys have with me once again. It's just getting low. Now it's hard to put a value on missing out on everything. I've missed out on my children's lives, and I'm just hoping for maybe not miss out on my grandchildren's lives. So I don't know.
I definitely understand that. Yeah, I definitely understand that. You can't put a price tag on missed birthdays, missed holidays, first steps, first words. Those are things you can never get back. And that's what people don't understand about wrongful convictions. It doesn't just affect the person that's in prison. It's like a throwing a rock into water. It ripples out. It affects the family. It affects the community. It affects everybody, whether they know it or not.
And we're not the only ones doing the time. It's our family doing it too. It's our loved ones that have to go through everything that they've gone through. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's not them. And my heart goes out to all of those families out there who are experiencing things. And what I would see is just someone else doesn't have to go through what I've gone through. Maybe I could see some other people have a little bit of hope somewhere when I had so little. That would be the start of justice right there.
That's so cool that, you're not just thinking about yourself. You're the one that's in the situation right now behind bars. You're the one that's been wrongfully convicted. But at the end of the day, you're not just thinking about you. You're thinking about, how can I help somebody else not have to go through what I've gone through? And that speaks volumes about the type of person that you are. And I'm thankful that I've been able to talk with you and hear more about your case, because a lot of times people get real in their, it's all about them. I need help getting out of prison. Yeah, I understand that, but it's not just you. Your family has suffered. Your friends have suffered. The community at large has suffered because the police did illegal things. So
Absolutely.
The real criminal is still out there, and you're the one behind bars.
Absolutely. And it's not just me going through this. There's other families that are going through the same situation. And you know what? It's hard for us to get heard. It's hard for us to get our voices out there. And you know what? My heart really goes out to those people. I wish them only the best. Hope number one step at a time. Again, to expose just a little bit. Kind of like pulling a thread. Pull a thread just a little bit. You never know how much of that sweater unwinds.
Exactly.
Hopefully it exposes what the real true problem has been and what they've been able to get away with. Good old boy system where they've been covering each other's backs for so long comes to light, because you know what? You can't hide it forever.
That's right. And there's going to come a point in time when everybody's going to say, enough is enough. Let's hold these people accountable for ruining lives, because that's essentially what they're doing. They're tearing families apart. They're ruining innocent people's lives while the perpetrators are still out there. The real criminals are still out there, and they're just not wanting to do their jobs or worried about the next promotion or whatever it is that causes them to do this.
And that's another thing that I would like to see change as well. I look at, they talk about what the system looks like from the aspect of the street, and they try to promote this rehabilitation and things like that. But in Indiana, they have this phrase, it's tell on and you get to go free. And to me, that's an exact contradiction of what they're really trying to do. Because what they do, cop drug, they take them in there and they try to tell on 3 other people. So not only is their life ruined, but then they would be ruining the lives of 3 other people and the lives of their children, and exponentially so as it continues to pyramid. But what about the ones who go in there and they accept responsible action? They accept the consequence of what they've done. What about the ones who have the integrity character who sit there and say, you know what, I know what I did was wrong, and I accept my consequence? Why do we get those people who actually have redeemable traits or qualities or characteristics about themselves? Why do we take the ones that could be redeemed and we give them more time, but the ones that take the easy way out and they tell on these other people and they ruin their lives and the lives of their children and exponentially so, why do they get the time cut? Why are they the ones sitting there walking around on the streets? Well, that's the exact opposite of rehabilitation. That's giving them the easy way out, so they can continue to do the same thing over and over again. And there is no rehabilitation in that. That's the exact opposite of rehabilitation. They're encouraging, they're numbing, they're allowing this epidemic to continue to grow because they're creating it, they're endorsing it.
That's exactly right.
That's another thing that I should change. Never made any sense.
No, me neither. I don't understand it at all. And how reliable is a jailhouse snitch anyway? Come on now. They're going to say whatever you want them to say.
And that's the thing. Maybe if they began to quit using them and they were forced to do their jobs a little bit rather than having someone else do it for them, then we wouldn't have all the problem we have.
Right. That's exactly right. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share about your case or your experiences that we haven't covered today?
Off the top of my head, I don't think I think we've covered most of it, at least at a beginning level. So, I appreciate it. I'd like to take the time to thank you for, taking the time to speak with me. And I know that you have a lot going on, and I appreciate you taking the time to hear my story and, maybe help get this out there. So I'm truly appreciative of that. Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Been helping along the way.
Well, I thank you so much for taking the time out to actually speak to me about it, because, I'm not big. I'm growing. I've only been in, doing this for about 5 months now. But I am growing, and all I want to do is get your guys' stories out there, because the more people hear it, the more people will understand exactly how crooked our justice system is. And that's how change happens. One voice at a time.
Yes, people have to see it somewhere.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Yes, we appreciate it very much.
Thank you guys too. Thank you, Joshua, for speaking your truth and trusting us with your story. If this episode made you think, please share it, follow Wickedly Judged, and join us in the fight for real justice reform. If you have a story, a tip, or want to support our mission, reach out. We're here to listen. Before we close, I want to remind you that stories like Joshua's aren't just rare tragedies. They're warnings of what happens when we don't hold our justice system accountable. If today's episode made you think, please don't let the conversation stop here. If you have anything that you want to share with us, please let us know. You want to get involved? Here's how you can help. Share this episode. If you believe in our mission, spread the word. Send this episode to a friend. Post about it on your socials and tag us. The more people who hear these stories, the harder they are to ignore. Follow Wickedly Judged. Subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeart, or wherever you listen. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to stay updated on new episodes, case updates, and ways that you can still get involved. Support our advocacy. Check out our merchandise at wickedlyjudge.com. Every purchase goes directly to supporting our investigations, advocacy, and the fight for justice reform. Wearing our gear helps spark conversations and spread awareness. Get involved. If you have a story about wrongful conviction or injustice, or if you want to help as a volunteer or supporter, reach out. You can email me directly at wickedlyjudged@gmail.com, or you can call me 513-393-7452. We're always looking for passionate advocates to join this movement. Join our community. Sign up for our upcoming email newsletter to get exclusive updates, behind-the-scenes content, and ways to take action in your own community. Visit our website and enter your email to stay connected. And finally, never underestimate the power of your voice. Every share, every follow, every conversation helps build momentum for real change. Together, we can make a difference for people like Joshua and for countless others who are still waiting for justice. As always, I want to give a special thanks to Veteran Alliance for their support, and to JP Verse of Versefire Records for providing the music that keeps our message strong. Thank you for listening, for caring, and for being a part of Wickedly Judged. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and stay hopeful, because nobody deserves to be wickedly judged.